garden of pure ideology.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad.
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
I think you're the best ever.
Look down, back up. Where are you?
You're in the bush.
Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never been there.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do...
Wanna play Bobby?
I think we're going to be here a while.
Welcome back to Filmmakers in Advertising. This past year's been a journey of learning, and we've had the privilege of gaining some valuable insights from our generous guests. Now, if you've noticed our somewhat irregular release schedule, there's a reason for that. As you may have heard me say before, we're not just a podcast. We at Cry are first and foremost a production company, and our goal with FIA has always been to demystify the world of filmmaking in advertising. In our next phase, we'll dive deeper into the filmmaker and production company side of things, shining new spotlights on the people and roles you might aspire to yourself. This past year, however, we honed in on the agency side of things, which includes today's episode, which I saved for last because it is holiday relevant, as it features the creative minds behind one of my favorite holiday campaigns in recent memory, Holiday Night Fever for Capital One, starring John Travolta. Joining us today are Brandon Curl and Dale Austin of GSD&M, an American advertising agency headquartered in Austin, Texas. Together, they share their experiences working with top brands like Capital One and Pizza Hut, as well as their creative strategies for, get ready for it, selecting directors, tackling unforeseen challenges, and knowing when to push deadlines to get the best results. You'll like that section. So whether you're a filmmaker or someone passionate about advertising, you'll walk away with fresh perspectives, actionable insights, and plenty of creative inspiration. But on that note, less me, more Brandon Curl and Dale Austin, Filmmakers in Advertising, Episode 30, commence.
Hi, this is Brandon Curl, Creative Director, Writer. This is Dale Austin, Creative Director, Art Director.
We're going to do some icebreakers to warm you up. Here at first.
Let's do it.
Dale.
Yeah, shoot.
Apparently you enjoy video games and comics.
I do.
Please tell us, without spoiling for those who haven't played it, why God of War Ragnarok is the best game ever.
Oh man. Without spoiling it, I mean, it's just the whole production experience of that video game. It's something else, it takes on a completely different life of its own. You have your traditional games where it feels like you're, really having to solve and figure out, what's happening in the game. But this game is definitely more of like it is a cinematic experience that takes you along for the ride, and so it indulges all the game senses, if you will, from like fun gameplay to awesome cinematics, great character design, beautiful graphics. It just hits all those high notes. So, yeah.
That's pretty great. I didn't know if you'd played or not, so that was an awesome surprise.
I have played this game. I played like maybe 4-ish hours, enough to like know enough of the game.
So you haven't finished it?
Yeah, I definitely bounced off the game because like I started playing it like during the holidays, and that's like during that time period where it's like,
yep,
there's just, you have time, but you also don't because there's so many things that you could be doing with that time. And so I think I switched from Ragnarok to start playing, man, I can't even remember. But yeah, I did bounce from it a little bit, but I do need to go back and finish it because I mean, it is a pretty awesome game.
It is. I think I have several Ragnarok things here in the room, the poster back there. Yeah, I think that one came out, last November. And yeah. I ended up realizing that I was carving out at least 90 minutes a night of sleep to get through that. And if I could put it in my letterboxd top 4 films, I would. And I know what I'm saying when I say that, but that's the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to carve out the little bit of time that you can. And that's the only way you can play games, when you're like this old.
All right, Brandon, you're up. I saw that you are referenced as the Adam Schefter of your fantasy football league. Is this correct?
I refer to myself that way. So
I know. I was trying to help you out, but all right, now it's on. My question for you is, how do you pull off this second life when working from an office? Because I had to retire a few years ago when my wife was like, I think this is getting out of hand. And I was like, you're right. It is getting out of hand.
Yeah. Late nights. I don't know. I got really into fantasy football probably about like
12, 15 years ago. I've been playing it for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
And I have like a home league with my friends from like grad school that I like play with. I have a work league that I play in and like a family league. But yeah, I also like, I have a secret passion for spreadsheets, which is unusual for a creative. But I have like this, basically I've been like keeping all the data for our league over the last like several years. And it's like the spreadsheet is like so massive. I've had to turn off like auto calculate features because if you change one cell, like my computer starts worrying. So it's, I'm sure I'm not using it to its fullest capacity. I just learned about pivot tables, which has changed my life. But essentially, I use all that data, and I have like a website where that is purely for like the 11 other people in my league.
So I couldn't see the website if I wanted to see it.
No, you could see it. Should I plug it here? It's worstleague.com. Worstleague.com. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We just had a post drop today. But yeah, it's a website purely for the 12 people in my league, and it's like there is no useful information if you play fantasy football and like you want to know like top sleepers or busts. It's purely about the people in my league, but it's like a fun kind of newsletter that I'm sort of in charge of and send out.
This is awesome. I'm looking at it right now.
It's the most professional thing Brandon does with his life, like from the writing to the design to the art direction. Like he does it all on his own, and every time I do see it, it's like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So, have you been to Bird Biscuit in Austin?
Yes, I have. I'm pretty sure. Have you been?
I actually used to live just a couple blocks away from Bird Biscuit, and on my walk or my run, I'd always be like, man, that place looks good. Just by like the design and the aesthetic of like the building, it's like you could tell. It's like, I bet they got good food there. I never went, but I regret it to this day.
Yeah, Bird Biscuit is great.
I should probably get paid by them at this point because I've plugged Bird Biscuit so many times. It was one of my favorite spots. We lived in Austin in 2019 and 2020.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, checking out North Carolina right now, which, Brandon, you're from North Carolina, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you went to Duke, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. Do you mind sharing what part of North Carolina you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, home of Wake Forest University, home of Winston cigarettes, Salem cigarettes, Krispy Kreme donuts. We're a very healthy town. So Duke was about an hour and a half away from where I grew up. So I grew up a huge college basketball fan. And so I told my parents I wanted to play for Duke basketball. And given our genetics, they decided that the best way for me to get into Duke was through school. So they told me, oh yeah, if you want to be on the basketball team, you have to do really good at school, which was not true. So I studied really hard and I got in, but I was not able to get onto the basketball team for some who knows reason.
So interesting. Basketball, that'll be fun when we bring up Charles Barkley with the spot you guys did. I'm just curious, did your time at Duke prime you at all for the career you have now?
Absolutely. I got really I was a part of an improv group while I was at Duke, and I think that was kind of my entrance into like comedy and performance. So I definitely did that. I wrote some like a humor column for the student newspaper. So I definitely had an interest in like performing and writing from like a young age. But yeah, in terms of like professional development, like no, like Duke, I had a friend the other day describe Duke's majors or degrees as like, picture like any subject that would have been in an encyclopedia 40 years ago. Like those are the majors at Duke. It's like math, English. There's no like marketing or advertising like programs there for better or worse. So it wasn't until I actually went back to grad school years later after teaching for a couple of years doing Teach for America. I went back to grad school, and that's how I ended up at UT in Austin, which has a great program. And so Dale and I actually went to the same program sort of at UT years apart. So Dale went to the undergrad program there. I went to the grad program there at different time periods, but both UT
Brandon,
educated.
When did you do St. Kyrie's Toe? Was that not when you were at Duke?
No, that's when I was in Austin.
Oh, okay.
That's when I was at grad school. It was 2010. Yeah, so for what Dale's referring to was back in 2010, Kyrie Irving played Duke. It was like his freshman year at Duke. And he like famously like 8 games into his career injured his big toe and was like, this great player, eventually was the number 1 pick in the draft, but had injured his toe and was not going to like play. And so we created this sort of like, it was kind of like the Red campaign from The Gap did that had words that had the word red in the middle of them in parentheses. And that was to benefit HIV/AIDS awareness. But basically we did the same thing, but for Kyrie Irving. And so it was like it was a tongue-in-cheek campaign where it was like, only you can help, the spirits of this toe together to support, this toe to help Duke basketball. And so it was like a campaign I did when I was in grad school, just with some friends, because I was a fan of Duke basketball, and it like went kind of viral. And so like Kyrie saw it, and like we ended up on like Sports Illustrated and the Wall Street Journal and like a bunch of places like that. And then Kyrie started writing. We had like a campaign slogans. All our shirts had words like potatoes, mistletoe, words, optimistic, words like that. So Kyrie, he wrote that on his boot and would wear that on his like boot at the games, and that was like on TV.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually why I got a job in advertising, was that campaign.
That was going to be my next question. I was going to say that seems like it's the type of impactful thing that I would assume a lot of students are looking to generate to get that job.
Yeah, my book was terrible. It was full of terrible ads that were not good. But then I did that thing, and then that actually got attention.
That actually brings something up. So there's going to be, get ready for it, shocker here. Our audience is primarily a hybrid of filmmakers who also have hands in advertising. Probably more so filmmakers than advertisers. So if you could kind of speak to that direction, because it's a little lopsided, filmmaker heavy, and more so, I'll just keep saying the term, filmmakers who are in production and want to understand how you guys think. So when you say book, can you tell us what that means?
Yeah. So to get hired in advertising, you have to put together like a portfolio. Some people call it a book. Like back in the old days, even when I was in grad school, we actually had a physical book that you had printed out ads on that you would take into job interviews. And it's basically just like a sample of your creative work. And when you're in school, you get assigned brands to work on, and you kind of make up your own briefs and you create ads for those brands. It's all spec work, all, hypothetical work that you would make. And so that is sort of the basic. It basically just shows like a creative director that when you're trying to get a job, like this is my creative thinking. This is kind of who you're hiring. So nowadays books are all just your website. It's online. So, that was sort of a non-traditional piece of my book that was actually interesting that ultimately got me a job.
That's awesome, man. So Dale, you did undergrad at UT. Brandon, you did grad school at UT. Since we're on that topic already, you stayed in Austin then, correct?
No, actually, I pretty much, once I graduated, or I guess how they do it at UT is they have these things called portfolio reviews, which is like at the end of each semester, you kind of set out your book on this table, and people in the industry, career directors or recruiters from different agencies, they'll come and they'll like walk around the tables and look at your book. And it's a chance for you to kind of share that work, try and network yourself a little bit. And so, basically there was a recruiter from an agency in Minneapolis, Carmichael Lynch, who saw my book. It was like the last, hey, we're wrapping up here, 5 minutes left, everybody's leaving. These people have been looking at books like all day. It's just like, yeah, okay, kid, whatever. Luckily, I was like, hey, do you mind just checking out my book real quick to this recruiter? Fortunately, she kind of took a shining to it and invited me up. And so, I went up to Minneapolis, and it was awesome there. I worked in Minneapolis for 3 years at that agency, and it's just a great place to kind of cut your teeth as like a young creative, learn sort of the production process. I kind of got to do my first commercial shoot when I was there, and just a lot of fun. Just too damn cold. Having been raised here in Austin, in Texas for most of my life, 3 winters in Minneapolis is about the max that I could take. Yeah, exactly. So I've been back here in Austin at GSD&M for the past 13-ish years now.
Yeah, I would say for anybody who doesn't quite get it, when we moved to Austin, I didn't understand why people would pay extra for the covered parking. And my dashboard melted and separated from the digital screens in the dashboard. And I figured out after a few months, I was like, that's why they pay for the covered parking. I see now. So Brandon, are you in Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
So when Dale moved back to Austin from Minneapolis, I was just kind of getting out of grad school. And then we kind of got paired together at GSD&M and, hit it off on our first assignment that we're working together. And we've been working together ever since. But I was only in Austin for basically a year. And then I ended up moving. My girlfriend, now wife, she got into grad school herself. And so I ended up kind of bouncing around the country following her as she was going through her training. And so, we were in Chicago for 5 years. We were in Boston for a year. Now we're in Houston. And so I've been remote all that time.
Wait, you were with GSD&M the whole time? That's awesome.
Yeah, I never left GSD&M. Yeah, great relationship. Jay Russell, our, ECD, Chief Creative Officer, he kind of worked with me, and this was long before remote working was really a thing. Dale used to bring me into meetings on a laptop, on Skype, and set me down in the room.
It was my head in a jar,
Exactly. And I would call in on those triangular phones, and we'd mute the computer, and I'd do the audio through the phone. We had a whole system, and we did that for years. And then after the pandemic happened, all of a sudden it got easy. Everybody was on Teams, and everybody was a box on the screen. And so remote work became, it was old hat for us, but now it's in vogue.
Well, it's not directly related, but I remember learning initially when I moved to Austin, I thought, man, there's a lot of agencies here relative to most other towns that I've seen, especially larger ones. GSD&M, Garrett Jesse. Then you've got those indie kind of cooler ones, Preacher down the street. I mean, there's like 15 agencies that people would recognize names. But then when I started talking to a friend, a line producer there, and he said, "Oh, you don't have to live here to work with them." He said, "In fact, it's probably better that you don't." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, you should probably go back to LA. They'll be faster to hire you." I was like, "I didn't know that. I thought it'd be better to be in town." He said, "That's not how that works." And so
that's funny.
Again, one of the motivations behind, I was like, I've got to start talking to people on the agency side more because there's just things that we're not grasping. And that was one of them.
It is a crazy paradox for sure, because there's lots of really good production companies in town, and for whatever reason, a lot of our productions, are in LA or New York, and sort of like those are kind of the towns that we go to whenever we're, looking for somebody to sort of bring our stuff to life.
And I get it.
Yeah, it's strange, because it's like, I feel like out of all the stuff we've done, Brandon, like we've probably only worked maybe with like an in-town production company maybe once or twice, and I don't know why that is.
It depends. I think it's budgets, or we'll do like a lot of post-production happens in Austin as well. Editorial, audio.
Okay.
Yeah, for
sure. I'm going to
sure.
do this in no particular order because like I said, it's a discussion, not necessarily a radio show. So I'm going to hop around out of order here. Let's say you go with one of those companies that you mentioned, and we'll start getting to specific projects soon. I don't want to get too specific yet because I would like to get some stories out of you guys without bringing anybody out specifically. How far along do you get to stay with your process? You guys have done some big stuff lately because your Pizza Hut commercials were in tandem with the new Ninja Turtles movie that came out over the last year, correct?
Oh yeah, that was so much fun.
Yeah, which I assume there was a lot of legal account crossover there with what you guys could and couldn't do. Your John Travolta Santa Claus one was big. Did you guys both work on that?
We did.
Yeah.
Do you guys more often than not work together, like as a team?
All the time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, all the time.
Exclusively. This is a marriage that we have. Oh yeah, it's a relationship for sure.
Oh, okay.
I literally married Dale in his wife. So
this is true.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. Best wedding is, at least that's what everyone says. So all because of this guy.
But yeah,
That's awesome.
I mean, I don't know if your listeners, what kind of background your listeners have. They come maybe from the more production side versus the agency side.
More
but
so, production. Yeah.
Yeah. So typically in the agency side, on the creative side, you have an art director and a copywriter that are partnered or paired together, and they kind of form the team that kind of comes up with the ideas. And we see it from idea conception through editorial completion and shipping. So yeah, absolutely. Like you were asking about like Ninja Turtles or, the Saturday Night Fever ad we did with John Travolta and Capital One. And yeah, I mean, we're briefed on the assignment. We come up with the idea, write the script. And then the fun part of the job is when production becomes involved. That's when we get to go out and we're part of casting and we're part of picking the director. We're out there shooting, we're on set, and we're part of editorial. We're putting it together, looking with the VFX team, if there's any VFX involved, music, all that sort of stuff, all the way to the moment that it ships. So honestly, that's why advertising is fun. You make these little tiny movies that can touch all sorts of different cultural.
It's really interesting just because, I originally went to school for film. I did studied film for like about a year, went to advertising. But the thing about that is like, because of everything Brandon just said, it's like we get to sort of, concept the idea, write the script, like, do wardrobe, do production design, do the casting, go shoot the commercial, and then like come back, edit it, help figure out all this stuff along the way. It's like, in some ways of course I kick myself like, oh man, maybe I could have been like a big shot director or something like that. But, at the same time, I imagine directors who direct commercials, it's like they get the concept that's given to them. They come on, they shoot the thing. And yeah, maybe they'll touch on editorial a little bit, but for the most part, it's like they're already off onto the next thing. Whereas like this, it's like you living it in it, you get to touch all parts of the process. And in some ways, like that's a very rewarding experience.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was asking about your process specifically, because as you said, in a lot of situations, people are eventually removed from it. But you guys, to people who might not be familiar with the structure of agencies, the size of GSD&M and larger, you guys are basically the showrunners, and you're with it from conception all the way across the finish line. So you're kind of the first people and the last to touch it, correct?
Totally. Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, we definitely have people to answer to. I like to think of us as the showrunners, and maybe we are in some respects. But we have obviously like our bosses who have to give the thumbs up, and then ultimately it's the client who's paying for all this stuff. And if they don't like something, then it's our job to sort of creatively problem solve how to get them to like something or to agree with whatever it is we're trying to do.
So you guys are both there on set during production?
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay. So before I get too specific, then, have you guys found yourselves in a situation, because it's your work, obviously, from conception, copywriting as well, right? And Brandon, that's more your wheelhouse?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes, but we do it together. We write scripts together. I'm driving. I'm the one typing usually, but Dale will throw out jokes or lines. And
got it.
If I write it down, I think it's good. And if I don't, he just says something else.
Brandon is basically my like proprietary chat GPT, if you will,
Got it.
Exactly.
Have you guys found yourself in a position where you had a project and then you had to look at each other on set and go, it's not working. What do we do? This is why I was trying to stay vague.
I mean, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's all part of the process.
How did you guys handle that? Because to kind of be biased and support the filmmakers, if you will, we obviously want to do anything and everything to give you the best experience. But sometimes maybe it's just a big miss. I don't know if I've been in that situation, but I'd love to hear how you guys found yourselves in a situation like that and how you remedied it, and preferably how the director and or production company like got on board with you. And by the way, bad stories are just as good, if not better, if it fell apart somehow, because we can learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find often it is less the production company that is not like bringing their A game or not. I feel like it's less of like, oh, they're not doing what we're asking them to do, and it's more of like, hey, this idea that Brandon and I had thought that was so genius actually kind of sucks. And so, yeah, it's definitely a scary thing at that point. But it comes down to sort of the relationship that you try to establish with your director or sort of the line producer at that point for y'all to kind of all come together and sort of creatively problem solve, whether it be a script change or potentially changing the camera setup to something else that might be a little bit easier. It's a conversation. It's a little bit of give and take. We'll throw stuff out to the directors. He'll throw stuff out, or she'll throw stuff out for us. And it's about not being too precious with whatever the idea is. Obviously, like you want to sort of be that showrunner and like prove to everybody that your idea is great, but I hate saying this, but it's a team effort, and it's definitely just something that you got to be flexible with.
On that note, so you're solving problems with the directors. How do you guys vet your directors in your pre-interview stages? Because obviously, especially you start working with these larger companies, just go down the list of the ones you mentioned. Well, you're going to get proposed more successful directors too, which means they're potentially bringing in, I don't want to say ego, but maybe more stronger opinions. What is it that you guys are looking for in that process? And I also love to hear how that process works, and specific to you, because we know how the process works, but what is it that Brandon and Dale look for in these early meetings, or even before the meeting even begins? It could be website, portfolio, social media. Just want to hear about your process a little bit. Obviously, again, total transparency. These are the things that someone will be listening for and think, oh my gosh, I got to change my Instagram or something, because it could be anything.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, I don't, for us, I feel like it starts, once we get concept approval, once we have the script approval, it's like, okay, we've got a script now, then the producer gets involved. And so we have producers at GSD&M. And honestly, they're the point of first contact. Rarely are we vetting, or am I going out and like keeping abreast of like who are the best directors, who are the up and coming people out there that I would want to work with. Usually it's my producer who's coming to me and they're like, hey, here's a spreadsheet with like 25 links of people that I think would be good for this job, or we think this person might be good for this job. And then I'm clicking through those links, and I'm like looking, and usually it's like the number one point thing I'm looking at is like
the reel. Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at the reel, I'm clicking through, and I'm trying to, you're also time limited. It kind of sucks. It's the same way with casting too, honestly, where you'll watch I wish I could have time to like watch every spot on a director's reel all the way through. But usually I'm clicking through, I'm skimming, if I'm a big double speed guy, listen to podcasts at double speed. So I'm maybe watching stuff at like double speed, which is terrible to do. I'm watching stuff fast. I'm clicking through the timeline and I'm looking for stuff that I recognize or just like stuff that's honestly just like similar or representative of the kind of work we're trying to create based on whatever that script is. If it's comedic, I'm looking for somebody who's got like some good like dialogue, some like funny moments. And then if it's like, if it's something more aspirational, inspirational, whatever, I'm looking for somebody who can maybe bring a certain sort of visual aesthetic to the table. That's what we're trying to go after. So, I mean, it starts with the reel. And then once we narrow in on some reels that we're liking, we'll reach out. You have the phone calls. So usually it's a phone call with each director. It's, the phone call, is a great opportunity to just get to the personality of the person. Are they going to be collaborative? I know I'm personally always looking for somebody who's like going to like elevate the idea that we have. Our script is a starting point, and I'm looking for extra jokes, extra like things I hadn't thought of. To speak specifically, like Brian Buckley, who directed the John Travolta ad for Capital One, I felt like he really brought a lot of like thinking that we hadn't had. And like, he was a big fan of the movie Saturday Night Fever. And he was like, this is great. I want to see how we can mirror this. He introduced the ideas of like John Travolta having like a paint can, just like he does in the movie, or introducing this idea of him like having this whole connected story where the paint can he's carrying at the beginning as Santa Claus, he then later dips like a little girl's like ornament or a pine cone into, and then it becomes like magical. And so just finding all these little moments in the movie that we hadn't like even thought to do. And he like elevated those, and we were like, oh, that's great. And so when a director can come and like add their thoughts that actually elevate the idea and make it better, that is going to make us want to go with that person.
Another thing that, is part of the process is, once we've had that phone call, we'll get a treatment from the director, which is basically like, y'all probably know already, but it's that nice little document that's kind of art directed to look like, to bring this sort of like spot to life, to show you how it's going to look. And like, they always pull, scenes and cinematic swipe, and really gives you a good idea or a sense of like the tone that the director is like striving for. And then it's our job to kind of like take that and try and sell that treatment to the clients. But I feel like Brandon and I have kind of like come to the realization that, and this isn't always the case, but like more time than not, it still comes down to the reel in terms of like trying to narrow down on sort of the director or production company that you want to go with. It comes down to the reel. And I don't know why that is, because like, yeah, I mean, there are sometimes we get these treatments that are just amazing, amazing swipe, amazing design, like saying all the right stuff. Then you end up kind of going with that person, and it's a little lackluster. Whereas like times when you kind of go with your gut and it's like, this is the proven work that they've been able to do. It's like, it's just a way better indicator in my mind in terms of like, this is the end result that you're going to get.
That's good to know. I don't think we've heard it said that way before. So this is why, even if it's tough, because yes, there's things that we all quote should know, but even if something's obvious, there's kind of a golden nugget in there. And that's good to know, because I know a lot of directors who will hit home runs on treatments and maybe they wonder why they didn't get that call or something. I was curious to know about the reels. Are you guys getting those in spreadsheet form from your agency producers, or are they sending you right to website? Or are you getting a spreadsheet, like name, link right to reel? So Correct. You're not really having to swim through someone's website to get to their reel.
No, we usually get like a wire drive link or something with a bunch of spots that are been curated. Sometimes if a director, the EP there might like curate that playlist that they feel like it speaks to the kind of spot that we're making. So, if it's like a food spot, like, oh, here's some other food spots, like, that are similar to like Pizza Hut or something. So that would help inform us. So the other thing I wanted to add, like to touch on what Dale said, is like, I agree. I feel like you have to, tie goes to the reel. If you're deciding between like people, like, the reel over the...
Just to be clear, you said tie goes to the reel.
Versus, tie goes to the reel versus the treatment. Like if you're trying to decide. But I think there's something to be said for like hunger. Like there's a lot of times where we have like, maybe there's a director who's maybe more well-known, the bigger name. You can just tell they're not as passionate about it as maybe a hungrier, scrappier, younger director, whoever that might be. And you could really feel that like on the call, and you could feel that in the treatment and just like the extra legwork that goes into it. I think that does translate some of the time. Kind of doesn't matter where that person is in their career. Like, for example, like David Gordon Green.
Actually met David.
Yeah, David's great. I think, and he's...
I was a PA for David for a few months back in 2016. He was great. He was one of the nicest directors I ever met. He like made it a point to walk me over to his... Did you meet Brandon James, his producer?
Yes.
He was like, Cody, come on over. I want you to meet Brandon. I was like, oh, I'm not ready. So yeah, very nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, David is great. You're right, 100%. Super nice, awesome to work with. Loved working with him. And like one of the things that he did that was in his treatment were just like alt lines. As a copywriter, like I'm always looking for alt lines, especially on like jokes. It's like, I want some alt jokes.
That's cool. So you see that as a fun collaborative effort, not you're changing my dialogue. Got it.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, like, definitely let's get the stuff that's scripted, but I feel like the director is probably going to come with something that's funny or creative that maybe pushes things a little bit. And that's what I want. I want the director to push the creative, because on the other end of the spectrum, like I have to answer the client. Maybe there are some certain key points we need to get across in this commercial, but like ultimately, like I want the spot to entertain, because I think that's what's going to emotionally connect with people. And so, like having some alt lines, especially on set, like that's great. And then when we got on set, it's like, yeah, he's like rifling through lines with Craig. He's saying, hey, say this or try this or say it like this. That was a huge value add.
My favorite direction from David was, all right, now say it like an English nanny to Craig. And, or actually just even in casting, people that are coming for like casting for like pizza eater number 1. It's like, okay, now say large, cheese topping pizza with an English accent. And like for some people it throws them, but other people, the pros, they get it, and it's like, okay, all right, I see what he's doing here,
Say it like a preacher. I remember he said that once to Craig.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I think that was just like, it just kind of shakes you up and loosens you up a little bit and brings out a different kind of performance. And we ended up a lot of times we don't end up going with those sorts of takes, but it leads to a better take. So I thought that was a genius bit of direction.
Have you guys seen any other tricks like that in casting that stood out to you that you remember?
There's sometimes like it's maybe you're casting a part that doesn't have a lot of dialogue. I don't know. You want to get a different sort of sensibility. We did a production with the director. I can't remember which one this was for, but I remember maybe it was for the Harry's. We did a short film for Harry's where it was about it was like a 3-minute short film about a boy who runs into this alien and he has to teach this alien what it means to be a man. And so it was like kind of challenging traditional views of masculinity through this like sci-fi concept of meeting this alien. And so like it was kind of supernatural to some degree. And so one of the questions the director asked, just to get a sense, especially with like kids, if you're casting kids, like it's just kind of, how are they going to come to life? What's their personality like? And so I remember he asked them like, have you ever had a supernatural experience? Wow. And like that was like and like everybody I guess kind of has like a ghost story to share or something weird that's happened. And so these people were able to just kind of like just talk and like share this story, and just their ability to tell a story, or how kind of magnetic they were, I think was in some ways more important than the dialogue itself. But that was I remember thinking that was like a unique way to approach it.
Is. I'm glad I asked. I've never heard anything like that. And this was in the casting session.
Yeah, this was back when we were actually physically in the room for casting. Now casting is all done, I feel like, through, Zoom now. But yes.
So since you guys were a team, what was the defining moment? And I'm sorry if this is kind of corny, but in theory, where you looked at each other, what was the project or maybe the moment where you guys looked at each other and thought, oh my gosh, it worked. We're not going to get fired. In fact, we might even get to keep going, possibly even level up from this. You guys have a nice resume. I really couldn't tell which one was the one that was the fork in the road when things got better.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
I was the more junior writer when we started working together. I was basically like a few months away from being an intern when they paired me with Dale, who was a senior writer or art director at the time. So I'm curious at what point he knew that I could cut it.
Dale, what was it like taking on this young squire?
I mean, I had been working in advertising for maybe 4 years at that point. The partner that I was with for about a year, he had to go somewhere else. And so, they just paired me up with the intern. I guess you weren't an intern at the time, or were you?
I was like a freelance. I'd been an intern three months prior, and I was a freelancer.
Exactly. So they paired me with this like freelancer who I'd been seeing kind of walking the halls as the intern. And I was open to it. I was like, we'll see what happens here. It was for a Southwest Airlines local campaign, I believe, for Milwaukee. I will say, just for Brandon, it did not take long for him to impress the shit out of me because of his script writing ability and just how prolific he was in like being able to do that for somebody that didn't really have had exercised that like skill that much in terms of like, concepting and then writing and presenting and pitching and all that stuff. I remember we concepted one evening or afternoon a few ideas. And then the next morning, Brandon came in and the script fairy had written 10 different scripts, and they were all great. they're all amazing, you know? And at that point, it was easy. It was easy to see that like this guy was like legit. This guy was real. And I remember my boss at the time, he came in and he was like, "Hey man, what do you think about this Brandon guy? I was thinking about maybe hiring him." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. Absolutely." So, you know, I mean, it felt like I had a good thing from the get-go, but I will say that like, obviously with any sort of relationship, you kind of learn and grow, you know, with time. I will say that the one that solidified it for me was an assignment that actually is never made it never made it out into the world. We did make it. We did get to go. We saw the idea through. We went to go shoot it. It was this big sort of Broadway musical that we did for a fast food brand that sells burritos. I won't say who. But, yeah, it was this like awesome spectacle that like we got to work with this amazing director. You know, they brought in these choreographers, and you know, it just felt like this huge experience. And our bosses at the time, you know, they were like, "This is the best thing the agency's ever done. This is the biggest thing." And I mean, we were stoked about it. Obviously, you know, this was kind of our we had a few things that we had went and made, you know, a couple like I said, like Southwest Airlines, like regional spots for like Milwaukee or Denver, or we even did this like Harrah's casino thing that was just like whatever, you know, they were opportunities at bat, if you will. But this was like the first like knock out of the park for us, and for unforeseen reasons, it never is. But that's okay. That's okay, because you move on, obviously. And like, I think to this day, we're still trying to like figure out ways to like get it out there, or, you know, leak it somehow. But
this is that opportunity. Yeah,
obviously. Exactly. But yeah, you know, but what that did for us is like, it opened the door from an opportunity standpoint within the building, within the agency. And we kind of were able to sort of prove ourselves to our bosses and to people and to the clients that like, oh, wow, like they can make something really, really awesome. Yeah. I think at that point, that's when I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's take on the advertising world, Brandon.
This is kind of vague, so I'm going to start from a broader view. Because when I say we, I mean the filmmaker side of it, because we mostly only know what it's like pitching you guys. What's it like for you guys pitching? Do you guys ever get psyched out pitching? Have you ever bombed a pitch? Have you ever nailed a pitch? What is it like when you have a pitch today?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it depends. I love pitching. It's performing. Pitching is performing, and that's what I love to do.
This is where the stand-up comes in handy.
Yeah, exactly. The improv background, the stand-up, you know, I was a failed performer, you know, so this is my opportunity on some small scale to perform to like 12 windows on a Zoom screen in my office. It's fun. Pitching for Capital One, for example, it's great client, great taste, really fun to work with. Pitching in those meetings, it's like, I'm usually like singing, you know, in one concept, or I'm doing voices in another
so
one.
You're performing the spots that you're pitching.
Oh,
to
yeah.
kind of give that. Okay.
I intentionally think Brandon writes scripts for him to have to see. You know,
that's true.
Yeah.
I have a terrible voice. I don't know why I do this to myself.
The clients love it, though. They love it, and it's the commitment. You know, it's like the commitment to like be able to put yourself out there. 10 times out of 10, they're laughing, and you have them hooked at that point.
Well, I would assume that joy is contagious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. You have to think about it. It's like we're the most fun meeting of their day, probably. You know, they're in lots of meetings that are not fun, like marketing, you know, meetings, or meetings about budget, or, you know, other things that we don't have to worry about. And then it's that time for the advertising meeting. Like, we're the show. Let's have fun. And, you know, I have experience like performing stand-up to rooms of 8 people where no one's paying attention to you. And if you can perform in that venue, you can like, I used to teach middle school science, you know, and you got to keep those kids' attention. So if you can do those things, you can do this. And so it's really, as long as you're having fun with it, you know, like they see you're having fun, and then they have more fun. That's a big part of it. You know, we've done like, in terms of like pitching, you asked like a time when a pitch went well or a pitch didn't go well. Like, we definitely had some times where like, yeah, like you know, how do you become less sensitive to it? Something doesn't go well, like, oh, well, you know, you'll get them next time. That just kind of happens. New business is really where like the pitch, because that kind of like when I guess we're getting pitches from directors, that's kind of your new business opportunity, right? To like meet with us. And so we tend to go more all out on those new business pitches, you know, for us personally. Like, I remember when we pitched Harry's. That was like Dale and I, our first opportunity as creative directors. We had just been promoted to creative directors, and this was, hey, this is your first chance. Go pitch Harry's, this cool D2C shave brand. They came over into the building, and we had this whole idea that was like, it was the idea of like you could have a conversation with yourself in the mirror. So it's like, imagine you went into like a Dale's like, why are you sharing this? Imagine you went into a bathroom and you saw yourself, and then you talked back to yourself. And it was like you having this conversation with yourself. And this was back in like 2017 probably. So AI wasn't what it is now. But the idea is we were going to use like some sort of like face replacement technology or something, and like another actor to sort of be that other voice, but then have it deep fake yourself, and talk to yourself. So when the client came into the building to do it, we like turned the TV sideways vertically and had it set up in the room, and we dressed it like a mirror, and then we recorded a video of like me talking as the other half, and then we timed it out. So it's like I had a conversation with the mirror with me on the TV, which was like the mirror. It was totally hokey. Putting that together, I think just showed them, I think we were probably the hungry, scrappy underdog in that pitch. And I think that showed our desire to do it. And ultimately, we did not make that that thing, thankfully. We ended up making the film about A Man Like You, about the alien and the little kid. It was definitely a memorable pitching experience.
I appreciate you going deeper and sharing that, because there are occasions where, our people on the filmmaking side, you wonder if you're doing too much or if you're trying too hard, if you're looking desperate by going too hard. So it's nice to hear. And it's also nice to hear what you guys are doing on the other end, where if you've put yourself out there that much and we're not doing it that much, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but maybe you could be like, well, they're not trying very hard, and we know what it looks like to try, and we put a lot into this. So we're going with the director and or the company that's like going for it at the same speed we are. Does that sound like it makes sense with the way of thinking? Or
I never felt like a production company or a director is feels desperate because they're trying too hard. Like, I never felt that way. I just feel like they're really hungry and they really want it. If anything, I feel bad at the end that we have to award it to only one of the three, because usually you're triple bidding. That sucks. You can never err on trying too hard.
This one might seem kind of odd, but I'm curious to know, is there anything frustrating you guys about the commercial industry right now?
Ultimately, we're trying to make something that we think is cool and, that people will enjoy and that will resonate with people, and then hopefully sell a product at the same time. Sometimes those two goals can butt heads. Ideally, they work together and they work well. And so that's usually when things get the most challenging. But we just try to enjoy the process and enjoy like the daily part of the job. It's been really fun working on Capital One lately, because we're just able to write like a ton of scripts, and that's just made us sharper and enjoy like writing more comedic 30-second spots. Yeah.
So I was going to ask about Capital One, because you have a range of Capital One spots, and Capital One itself has a range. Like they have some pretty dialed down stuff, and they have some very funny stuff. What is your favorite, or at least your favorite right now, that you guys have done?
Well, we're relatively new to the Capital One brand. I guess we've been on it for like a year or so now, maybe probably a year and a half at this point.
You two specifically, or GSD&M?
Us specifically. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was at the agency. It's been at the agency for 4 or 5 years now, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, we've been on it for about a year and a half at this point. And honestly, we've really enjoyed our time working on it. The two biggest spots that we've done are, one is the Holiday Night Fever ad with John Travolta, which was like an awesome experience.
Which I assume that got good response, right? The people in the room with me, when I saw it, I think I saw it with my parents in the room. They loved it. Loved it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
It was real big with the dad crowd.
Okay.
My dad loved that ad. Sometimes like my parents have no clue what I do, or like they don't get it. Like I don't know if my mom got the Craig Robinson stuff we did for
different generation though.
Exactly. But John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever, are you kidding me? Like iconic.
Yeah.
So it was
during that
big
window that it aired from like, November to late December. Not going to lie, my dad called me every day, which like,
that's awesome.
No, I mean, we like talk like, once a month kind of thing, but no, he called me every day. It was just like, man, I just love that ad. That's the best thing. It's so good. It's so good. And it's just like, we hit the right demo, I guess, in some respects there.
That must have felt awesome.
I mean, sure. It was nice. It was nice.
No, I love that ad. It was fun. It was such a dream to make. It's such an iconic piece of cinematic history, and to like recreate it in such a simple, fun way where, John Travolta as Santa. We didn't invent the John Travolta as Santa character. Like a previous creative team had Capital One had a spot with Travolta as Santa with Sam Jackson, actually. which was a great spot. And they kind of came to us, and it was like probably written 80 other spots relevant for like football and holidays. And it's a long process that we get through. We're on that for like 6 months before we kind of narrowed in on like, well, what if we did something for the holidays? And, with Capital One, we're always trying to think really big. What's something that can not only be a great spot, but something that really makes a splash? It's like, and that's a challenge. How do you make a spot that actually gets headlines? And so that's really what the Holiday Night Fever kind of came out of, was like, okay, what if we had him as Santa and we recreated this like iconic opening scene from Saturday Night Fever? And so it was just, it was all, some things, like you said, on a production, some things go wrong along the way. Like usually you get to the rough cut, you get to the first rough cut of an edit. Like after you've gone through everything, you scripted it, you casted it, shot it, etc. You get that first rough cut. And that is a tough like moment, because usually it sucks. Usually you're like, oh no.
That's really nice to hear, because most of the time we hear that about your narrative stuff, your indie feature or something, or even any feature. Someone's like, I just want to throw up. I've ruined my life. I can't believe I've done this. So it's validating to hear you say it, even in this scenario. I was curious about these pitches, and that's the best one that comes to mind for me. I'm sorry if I've been focusing on that one too much, but with that pitch, how do you pitch something where you're like, hey, we have an idea, but there's all these other things that have to work to make this idea work? You can't go, oh, John Travolta's not available, so we're going to, go with somebody else. Did you build on a relationship that was already there, as you said? Or did you come in blank and just go, we have a wild idea, but hear us out?
That's the beauty of working on Capital One, honestly. Yes, on certain accounts, like using talent generally. When we came up with the idea for like Craig Robinson as sort of this like brand spokesman for Pizza Hut, like we were kind of inventing this brand character, and we suggested, like, Craig was like our first suggestion for this character, because he was kind of who we had in mind, and the client loved it. They were fans of Craig. They're like, that's great. And so then they reach out to his representatives and they start talking and then negotiate, a contract, and then we're off to the races. But, sometimes the relationship, like you said, is already there. In the case of John Travolta, they'd worked with him previously. And so like that relationship was established. But the beauty of Capital One is that they are a brand that's known for working with like a lot of different celebrities, like Samuel L. Jackson, Jennifer Garner, Charles Barkley, Spike Lee. Like they have these sort of relationships. And so when we're concepting with Capital One, it's like anything goes. Anything you want to think of.
That's cool. That's cool to know.
Come up with it. Like, normally to suggest Saturday Night Fever, we got to get the Bee Gees on board. We got to get Paramount has got to sign off because they're the movie. We got to get the talent. We've got to get John Travolta. There's a lot of elements there. Capital One is always game to go like explore ideas. And so as a creative, at first it's a little scary, because you're like, normally it's like, the budgets, they were so small, or, are we, we're limited here. But with Capital One, it's like you have to rise to that level. It's kind of it's definitely a fun challenge.
Do you have a wish list? If there was anyone you would like to work with, have you talked about this? Do you have a short list of anyone who comes to mind? You thought, man, wish we could get this person.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, early in my career, I feel like, Wes Anderson, I'm sure that's like a very like stereotypical response to a lot of like young creatives. And especially at the time, this was like the early aughts or whatever. And I mean, obviously he was all the rage, but just, the cinematic eye that he brings. And so, he's done a couple spots and they're pretty awesome. But yeah, I mean, that was always one that, oh man, wouldn't it be great to get him to work with us? Or, I feel like nowadays though, it's definitely more like a comedy director is somebody that like we would want to work with. And I think that's just more general kind of the style in terms of like work that we try to create more times than not. You kind of asked earlier about like, do you like some of the more like poignant stuff with Capital One or some of the more comedic stuff? And I think in general, if Brandon and I have like the chance, like we're always going to write comedy. We're always going to want to try and do more of a comedic thing, because like that's what we want to fill our book with, to be known as like, hey, these guys do funny stuff. They do funny work. A very similar way of like how a director needs a sort of a POV, or is known for sort of a genre that they do. That's a lot of ways. That's what Brandon and I try to like build our work around, is like to become known for the guys that can do X or Y as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've already worked with so many great people, like it was awesome working with Seth Rogen's team on the Ninja Turtle movie, like actually like sending scripts over to them, having them scripts back and forth. Like that was an awesome dream come true to like write a spot.
Oh, so you got to work with them directly to get that stuff.
Well, indirectly. We work with the Paramount advertising people, who then are like the medium. But we had a script that was going back and forth, and then it would go over to his production, and we would get notes from like Seth and his team, and because they were very opinionated, obviously, about how they want the Turtles sort of represented and their new brand of it. And so I think we were like one of the only like brand partnerships they did with an actual like spot. And so like we had the animators animated like the turtles, like getting an order of pizza. And so I know, as somebody who grew up playing like Ninja Turtle video games, like in a Pizza Hut as a kid, doing a Ninja Turtle, exactly, doing a Ninja Turtle.
I'm him. You know the Obi-Wan meme where he's like, of course I know him. He's me.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that was great. I mean, in terms of directors or people that I want to work with, I don't know. I feel like I keep writing Will Forte into spots because I find Will Forte so funny. Last Man on Earth is like one of my favorite shows, and they ended it on a real cliffhanger. I really want to know where that would happen. Dale and I also write Scott Bakula. We have a long running bit where we write Scott Bakula into a lot of our scripts. I don't know why. I think we were both just fans of Quantum
Specifically,
Leap.
like Quantum Leap, I feel like we want to like some sort of Quantum Leap idea to like see the light of day. I know like they already did the reboot. I think I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's good or not. But man, something about Scott Bakula just feels like the right answer.
That kind of segues nicely into a question I had for you guys is like, how do you stay inspired and where do you draw inspiration from? Is this stuff coming to you on a whim? Are you doing anything intentionally to stay inspired? Or are you just living your life and, reading comics and playing games? And then, when the opportunities come up, you just see what happens.
Yeah, I think Brandon and I, we kind of have two different approaches in terms of like how we get our inspiration, and like specifically within, the world of advertising. Brandon he's great about being in the know or being on top of like, hey, this is a great spot that just came out, or like, look at this the cool campaign that this brand did. And Brandon, I won't speak for you too much, but you're also great about like being on top of like films and shows. And I know you keep a whole list and stuff like that, but I do feel like you're more plugged in, have your ear to the ground to the industry than I am. I tend to try to not like let any of that stuff influence me whatsoever. Like I've got all my comics here. I've got my video games. I've got other things that films, I got other things that I try to draw inspiration from. And so the hope is that like, I'll come over here, I'll get all these experiences, I'll get all this inspiration, and Brandon can do the same, but maybe from more of a commercial lens and pop culture. And we sort of get kind of the best of both worlds.
Sounds like a really good marriage. Ironically, which you guys said at the beginning.
Exactly. Brandon's, he's a huge sports fan. I tried to be a sports fan, but it's just not my thing, Yeah, I'm like definitely more of like on the nerd pop culture side. Brandon is more on like the regular, I guess if that's what you would call it, pop culture side. And so, ultimately it does become like a marriage. Yeah, exactly. It becomes like a marriage in terms of finding the nugget or the insight from both sides, if you will.
Yeah. Do you have any resources that you look at to stay up to date? Because I know for me, sometimes I wish there was a curator that I could find to better track this stuff. Like I wish, for example, that I was watching, quote, the best movies that I should be watching to get better at the craft all the time. But I also hate wasting time. So I don't want to just watch whatever comes out on Netflix. I would like to be watching the next best thing speaking of apps, I wish somebody would make that app, right? Like I wish I had a curator to say, hey, you've seen, maybe Letterboxd can do it. It's like, you've seen these, this should be your next one up. Is there like a website or something or a newsletter that you frequent to stay on top of what you think is good?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm, you're on Letterboxd or whatever, have like maybe, your, or, top movies or whatever, or like, I don't know if I'm that deep into it. I have a little like notes app on my phone where I just like write down the movies and TV shows and books that I'm like, reading or watching this year, and I kind of rate them. It's just a great way because we do consume so much content, or I do.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of advertising, like it's kind of old school, but I get an email, like a 4A's smart brief is like something that's sent to me every day from the 4A's that I subscribed to probably when I was a student, and I still get it.
What's that one called again?
It's the 4A's, which is like the advertising association, like professional association. Okay. And they have a smart brief, basically an email newsletter that comes out every day. And it's got, like the 5 or 6 PR releases of like the, whatever new campaign is out. And you can just kind of click the link. I sometimes don't even read the articles. I just click the ad and watch it on YouTube. It's just a great way to keep abreast of like the newest campaigns that are coming out. So I do that. I'm on Twitter. I follow brands. I try to listen to podcasts. There aren't a lot of great advertising podcasts out there. So this one I'm going to start adding to my queue to listen, especially from a creative angle. Like I feel like a lot of them are around like the business sort of angle, which I'm less interested in.
All right, I'm going to throw another weird one at you before I lose you guys. For some reason, poof, you're able to put the minds you have now into your 22-year-old graduate bodies. What's the first thing you would do? But obviously you're staying in the advertising industry.
Is that obviously what we're doing?
Sorry, I guess for the sake of relevancy here, you have to stay in the ad industry. So the mind you have now in your fresh out of college, a new, I guess, are we still on Gen Z, or are the new graduates still Gen Z?
Alpha's
I
on
think
the
so.
way.
Alpha's on the way, huh? Okay, well, whoever's graduating this coming spring, that's you. You're in that class, but you have all the knowledge that you have now. I'd love to know what you guys are doing to break back in. You can't use your existing connections.
Yeah, man. That's an interesting question. I think having the mindset that I have now is maybe this is more in terms of like how to do the job and less of like some like great like technical insight or something like that. But and I tell Brandon this all the time, and I might get fired for saying this, but like timelines aren't real. It's like you're giving your deadline. I mean, they are real. Yes, there are deadlines and whatnot. But like in reality, it's just, somebody somewhere designated that like, okay, we need to see ideas at this point, or hey, we're going to do this at this point. And it can always be pushed. You get so much pressure, you feel so crunched for time, trying to juggle so many things, especially as like a young creative. You're just saying yes to everything, any assignment that comes across way, because you're just trying to prove yourself at that point. And you can end up juggling a lot. And, the more you sort of spread yourself thin, the shittier the work is going to be. But if you're able to sort of juggle it successfully in terms of like, oh, well, let's just push this deadline here. Like, oh, hey, like this isn't a real timeline. Like this is just some sort of internal check-in that like doesn't really matter. I feel like to me, it changes the game in terms of just like the power you have over your own work schedule.
Can you go in on that? Are you saying, I'm trying to interpret that the best. Are you saying maybe don't work with a panic because timelines and just live more interested or something and engage or enjoy the work more? I want to interpret what you mean.
I mean, that's a good point. Cause I feel like with any creative, like it, in some ways it's like having that deadline is the thing that like, we're all procrastinators to some degree. And it's like having that deadline is the thing that like makes you actually sit down and write the script or concept the idea. Yeah. There are times where, you get crushed, you get buried under the work, and you're able to sort of reorganize things, spread things out a little bit more. And you're able to focus on the jobs that are important, essentially, because there are a lot of jobs that you're going to get that aren't important, but they need to be done. But if you can push deadlines, make your own timeline, then you're able to really focus on the thing that matters.
I would agree. That's one of the best things that Dale ever taught me. It was, deadlines don't matter. It's like, we're going to have to pull all night. And he's like, we'll just ask for more time. It's fine. It's all made up. And then we do. And then it's great. It's easy to burn yourself or other creatives once you're creative director all weekend on an assignment. And then like, sometimes that is the case. Sometimes a deadline truly is what it is because of a client often, or a vendor or whatever, but it's just advertising, so, it's not life or death.
This is a terrible monster you guys are putting into the universe right now because
no,
this
it's great.
starts coming back.
We're improving people's
and
lives.
People are, what happens when the director goes, guys, I thought about it over the weekend, but the weather was nice. So can we push your Super Bowl commercial?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we would have to take that back to the client and we would explain, and they may say like, okay, yeah, you're right. And we might get a better product out of it, the power of pushing back.
I was joking about it, but I would assume if you've been using this philosophy, then you have put yourself in that position before, right? You have to have. If this is a mindset that you've had, I'm sure you've had to ask on many occasions then for pushing that deadline, right?
Yeah. It's a hallmark of a great creative director that you can give your teams time to think and work. You have to protect that. Allow them the time to be able to like actually come up with ideas. The best creative directors that we work with like do that for us and clear our schedule and make it so that we have time to come up with good ideas. And so, it probably follows down to the vendor level as well. Like if the agency can clear off time for the production team to like have the time to do what they need to do, I'm sure that improves the product at the end.
What does a healthy check-in sound like where you guys feel supported without that obnoxious, your hair's on fire rush?
There are times where it's like we will work with some clients and it's like, okay, you're briefed on a Monday. We're going to see scripts on a Tuesday. We're going to take them to the client on a Wednesday. I mean, that's a super fast timeline for anybody. And, sometimes you can't push that. Sometimes you can't push that timeline, and that timeline is real, but there's no harm in asking, because obviously the worst they're going to say is no, and you're still in the predicament that you're in. But I would say a healthy timeline, which like we do get on our current client right now, is like, I would say anywhere from like 4 days to like a week, a nice week to like work on stuff is like an appropriate amount of time, which sounds like a lot of time. And honestly, not a lot of people get that nowadays.
I'm actually glad you're saying that because to be fair, That's a little bit of a surprise to me.
Okay.
I didn't know that that's a lot of time.
Well, it depends, I guess, what you're talking about. Like, what is it, a whole campaign? Is it a spot? Like, are we looking for activation ideas? It kind of depends what it is. Dale's maybe talking about the time it takes for us to get the work to our creative director, not like to client, probably.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, though, it's not like we get our assignment and we get to go off and shut ourselves into a room or cabin, ideate for like days on end to try and come up with the perfect idea. A lot of times it is like against the clock, and and you try and make do with what you can in your day. It can be, I don't know. It's interesting. It's like whenever I was like a student getting into this job, I know this was not how I should have based my expectation of advertising, but What Women Want was the movie or like whatever. And like, I won't say his name, but that actor who like, was like a creative director, he got to like, take the product home and like put on the lipstick and like dance with jazz and like it. I don't know. It felt like he had like time to come up with this idea. That's not how it is at all.
You wouldn't possibly mean the actor that's a celebrity in your community, right?
Oh, wait. No, that was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Different advertising movie. Also very influential into my career choice.
Dale's talking about Mel Gibson for anyone that's not following along. That's who we didn't want to say.
I didn't know if it was okay to like, do we talk about Mel, especially like a filmmaker podcast? I mean,
I told you guys can talk about whatever you want. There's no rules. I don't have anyone to answer to. This is it.
Two great advertising movies, though. Yes.
Yeah. Another question I want to ask, and it might seem kind of vague, and it can be tech, it can be trends, storytelling methods. Is there anything at all that you guys are maybe enthusiastic about lately that's upgrading or changing your lives, or that you're bringing into work with you?
Well, we're actually working with Mel Gibson on a project that we're really excited about. Just kidding. We're not working with Mel Gibson. I would say one of the things we're really excited about recently is, and maybe it's just something like I would have told my younger self, is this sort of project we're working on internally within the agency. Dale and I are kind of building this creative incubator. We call it like a proactive playground for creativity at our agency. And we're training and doing workshops with not only creatives, but people from across the agency. We've had people from accounts to media to accounting, strategy, social, involved in these sort of creative workshops. And what we're doing in there is we're teaching this process that's something that Dale and I developed over, years working together, that we call BYOB, bring your own brief. And what that means is, sometimes the best ideas or the most fun that we've had in our career came not out of like briefs that came from a problem from a client, like trying to solve a problem, but rather just from our own proactive, creative passions, things we wanted to make or do. And how could we find a way or a home for that for a client? So, for example, one of the BYOB ideas that we had over the years was this idea called the sports equinox that we did for Goodyear. And this was a project where I was just on Twitter one day, as one is, and I noticed ESPN had tweeted that like, hey, in 10 days, there's the possibility of a sports equinox happening. And it's like, what's a sports equinox? It's like, oh, that's when all 4 major American sports are having a game on the same day. And it's very rare because it can kind of only really happen in October when like football's still going on and baseball's, it's at the World Series and the NBA and NHL have all started. And it kind of has to be on like a Thursday or a Sunday, a day that there's an NFL game. So it's really rare, but it could happen. And so we got together and I was like, hey, Dale, what could we do with that? And we thought, hey, what if you could go to all 4 of those games? Because not only was the sports equinox happening, but it was happening for the first time in the same city. So it was all happening in Los Angeles, and that had never happened. So it's technically possible for someone to go to all 4 major sporting events in one day. And so that's where it kind of came in. We were like, this would be great for our client, Goodyear. The blimp is associated with sports and LA traffic's the worst. So what better way to get to all the events than in the Goodyear blimp? So this was an idea that was like literally from concept creation to execution took 10 days, which is we were just talking about a week to come up with an idea. This was 10 days from idea conception to like the actual event to do it. But yeah, we ended up pitching the idea to Goodyear proactively. They did not ask for this. We just came to them with this idea. They were like, great, let's do it. We got Desmond Howard involved. He was kind of our host. We surprised a veteran fan from LA who got to go on this experience. And it was like him, like the veteran, Desmond Howard, the director, the camera guy, and me on the blimp, basically going to all 5 of these games. We actually added a game, and there was an MLS game in Los Angeles on that day, including the World Series. And so that was just, as a sports fan, it was like, I was like one of only like 10 people that got to do it that day, one of which was Lance Bass, who was also doing it, ironically, in LA. So it was a great experience, and we just had a lot of fun doing that. And so over the years, we've had a range of those sorts of ideas, just proactive ideas. And so we're all busy in our jobs. We all have our day to day, and it's hard to like ask extra time of yourself to keep your mind open to like doing these sorts of extra things, but it's very rewarding. And so that's what we're trying to do is we kind of trademarked this BYOB process, so to speak, within our agency. And we're trying to teach this in a workshop to other creatives to get other people to do that.
Yeah, you know, Brandon, I think you were doing BYOB before you even realized it. You know, if you think about it, the Save Kyrie's Toe was sort of the first BYOB idea that you brought to the table.
I was curious to know, and obviously it sounds like you're getting it, what it looks like to say, hey, everyone, I'm actually going to stop you from what you're doing because we're going to do this thing on top of your work. So stop your work and whatever you have to do. But I would assume you're getting the support that you need to do that and to host that.
Well, there's no stopping the regular work. This is like on top of the other work that you're already doing. So that's what I'm saying. It's hard. You have to carve out time. If it were easy, anyone would do it. You know, it's like, this is going to sound rah-rah, but there was like a Tom Brady quote. I heard him like talking, and he was talking about like, you know, everybody's like focused on talent, but it's not about talent. It's, you know, if you want to be great, you just have to be the one thing that everybody else isn't. And that is like persistent and disciplined and just like do the extra work that it takes like every day. And, you know, like we're just making commercials here. He's like winning 7 Super Bowls. So totally different ballpark, you know, to the GOAT. But I would just say that like you have to carve out that time for yourself and find time to do the projects. And the good thing is that it should be fun. If you're doing, you know, these proactive projects should be things that you enjoy, that you like. That's the part that's not going to feel like work. It's the other stuff that's going to feel more like work. You just have to kind of find time for yourself to do it.
Like I said, you can always push a deadline. You know, sometimes you can push off the other thing that's like, oh man, I'd rather be working on this BYOB assignment. Well, you know, but I got this, you know, social media post I got to put out. Oh, maybe we can push that deadline a little bit while we work on this thing. You know, again, it's like, I guess it's about prioritizing what's important.
And I'm sure for filmmakers, it's probably the same. You're probably working on your own like side projects or your own personal films, you know, maybe that you're trying to get off the ground in addition to, you know, to a brand thing. I mean, honestly, that's what we're talking about is like, we're taking a side hustle and we're trying to find a way to get a client to pay for it because I want to go to the World Series in a blimp. So how can I get a client to pay for that? Like, that's what it is.
That's cool. I like that. Guys, because of the time we had allotted and how much I like what you just said, I really can't think of a better note to end on. That's if people wanted to follow you guys' work, where could they go?
Yeah. I mean, you can follow me. I guess I'm on Twitter, Brandon Curl. I don't really post a lot. I'm more of a lurker. But you know, the best place are, you know, our websites is where we post a lot of our work.
I was going to ask if you're comfortable with me sharing your websites because they're nice.
Yeah. Mine is brandoncurl.com. I try to keep it pretty updated, as Dale makes fun of me for staying on top.
And same for you, Dale. Can we go to your website?
Absolutely. Mine's just Dale-Austin.com. The other Dale Austin is like some sort of nude photographer. So I don't know.
That's sure, Dale. That's not your.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not your
it's
work.
not mine at all, guys. But I will say, like, you know, Brandon and I have been working together for the past 13 years, and he's much better about like keeping stuff updated and even like making stuff look better. So just everybody go to brandoncurl.com. It's great.
Man, the traffic this week on brandoncurl.com is going to just spike through the roof. I'm so excited for this.
Well, I just wanted to say thanks while we're still recording. Thanks so much for doing this. I'm sure our audience will appreciate you answering those questions as much as I did.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us, Cody.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Brandon Curl and Dale Austin of GSD&M from Austin, Texas. You can see the show notes and links at filmmakersinadvertising.com and or filmcry.com/podcast. From Cry, a creative production and post house based in New York City, I'm Cody, and this is Filmmakers in Advertising. What's your favorite holiday commercial?